Let's jump into an epic story. When you hear about Native American empires, you probably think of ancient civilizations like the Maya or Aztec, who were thriving long before conquerors like Cortez landed. But some Native American powers rose much later, even after the United States gained independence and started pushing west. Today, we're heading to the Great Plains to explore one of those powers, a massive territory controlled by fierce warriors, expert horsemen, and deadly archers. You might mistake them for the Mongols, but nope, this is the Comancheria, the land of the Comanche, or as they call themselves, the Numunu, meaning the people. The Comanche started as part of the Shoshone, a group from 15th century Wyoming, known to some as the Snake People. Around the 1500s, they headed south to the Great Plains, likely pushed by the Little Ice Age, which ran from the 16th to 19th centuries. This climate shift led to a boom in bison populations, a vital resource for them. It's also possible they were chasing bigger bison herds, or better resources, though we're less certain about that. In 1680, the Pueblo Revolt in what's now New Mexico gave Native American tribes access to horses, brought to the Americas by the Spanish, who introduced them to a continent where they were previously unknown. Horses spread north, first reaching the Pueblo, then their neighbors, the Ute, and finally, the Shoshone. By the early 1700s, a group split off from the Shoshone, moving further south. They were likely after more horses, more space as other tribes crowded into their territory, or access to the huge bison herds in the south. This group became the Comanche, a semi-nomadic people whose lives revolved around bison. The Comanche followed bison herds across the Great Plains because these animals were essential to their survival. Every part of the bison was used: meat for food, hides for clothing and tents, horns for making bows, even intestines for cooking tools. They found over 200 ways to use the bison, from crafting weapons to cooking and building shelters. Horses were just as critical to the Comanche, shaping their entire culture. They were the Native American group with the longest recorded history of horse use in the Great Plains. Kids, both boys and girls, learned to ride as soon as they could walk, making horsemanship a core part of their lives. Horses weren't just for getting around, they were used for hunting, bison, fighting, and pulling travois, a type of sled previously dragged by dogs. Dogs could haul small loads, but they were no match for horses when it came to hunting bison or moving camp efficiently. By the mid-18th century, the Comanche settled in eastern Colorado and western Kansas, between the Platte River and Arkansas River. They clashed regularly with the Spanish, Apache, Ute, and nearly every other Plains tribe. In 1706, Spanish records first noted the Comanche, allied with the Ute, attacking Santa Fe and Pueblo settlements in Colorado. The name Comanche likely comes from a Ute word, filtered through Spanish as Quimanzi or Comate, meaning those who always fight or enemy. This name, given by another tribe, reflects their fierce reputation. It's worth noting that Native American tribes didn't always get along peacefully, even before European settlers arrived. Another theory suggests the name comes from the Spanish Camino Ancho, wide path, though this seems less likely. The Comanche loved to fight. Instead of raising their own livestock, they found it easier to raid their neighbors for horses and supplies, taking what they needed without trading. Their move southwest brought them into Apache territory, known as Apacheria, a name that, like Comanche, may also mean enemy in Spanish. Both names served as a warning. These were dangerous fighters, now neighbors. Tensions boiled over, and the Comanche pushed the Apache out. A supposed 9-day battle in 1724 at Great Iron Mountain, El Gran Cerro del Fierro, marked a turning point, though the only record comes from a Texas governor's account 60 years later, with no other documents to back it up. What's clear is that by the late 1720s, the Comanche had driven the Apache south to Texas, Arizona, and New Mexico Spanish territories. The Spanish weren't thrilled, as they now faced attacks from these displaced Apache. This victory made the Comanche the dominant force in the Great Plains, a role they held until the mid-19th century. This was the era of the Comancheria. To be clear, the Comancheria wasn't a traditional empire with a capital or standing army. It was an alliance of 13 family groups, making decisions through a council. Before 1750, the main groups were the Yamparica root eaters, Jupe, timber people, and Katsoteca bison eaters. Later, others like the Noconi wanderers, Quahati antelope eaters, and Peneteca honey eaters emerged, among others. The Aztecs, focused on bison, were the first to push south of the Arkansas River, settling from the Rocky Mountains to San Antonio, Texas, including northeastern New Mexico. The Jupe and Yamparica stayed north of the Arkansas until the 19th century. At first, the Comanches' arrival wasn't entirely bad news for the region's dynamics. The Comanches' horse raids in New Mexico frustrated the Spanish, but their strength came from mastering two uses of the horse: stealing through raids and trading the goods they took. They built trade networks with nearly all their neighbors, both Native American and European. Their territory spanned New Mexico, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Colorado, and Chihuahua, making them key players in the region's economy. Their nomadic lifestyle made it hard to pin down exact borders, but their dialect became the common language across this area, spoken by the 20 other tribes living there. The Comanche also kept their neighbors on edge with frequent raids, while skillfully balancing alliances and treaties to maintain their influence. In 1716, the Comanche and Ute visited New Mexico to establish trade with Spanish colonies. The Spanish suspected a hidden motive scouting their defenses for future raids. In response, they attacked a Comanche and Ute village northwest of Santa Fe in 1719, sparking the Comanches' first horse raid in New Mexico, kicking off a long tradition of raids. By 1725, Spanish records noted the Comanche still used dogs to move their tents, but by 1735, they had so many horses they were selling them to other plains tribes. At this time, they were settled north of the Arkansas River, but launched expeditions into central Texas and northeastern New Mexico. In 1740, their alliance with the Ute broke down, leading to occasional conflicts, though never as intense as their wars with the Apache. The Comanche expertly balanced war and trade. They disrupted the Spanish economy with raids while boosting it through trade in bison hides and captives, often other Native Americans taken in war. Besides the Apache and Ute, they fought the Lakota, Cheyenne, Arikara, Pawnee, Kansa, Osage, and Kiowa in the 18th century. Later, they formed lasting alliances with the Kiowa, Arapaho, and Cheyenne. The Spanish failed to stop Comanche attacks, but the French saw an opportunity. Their diplomats brokered peace between the Comanche and Wichita, leading to a trade where the Comanche sent horses and mules to New Mexico in exchange for French weapons. These weapons fueled more raids on New Mexico for nearly 40 years. With no central authority, different Comanche clans could choose war or trade independently. In 1743, the Spanish first reported Comanche in Texas, attacking Lipan Apache camps. The Spanish also tried converting the Lipan to Catholicism, but the Lipan, disliking their neighbors, set a trap in 1757. They requested a Catholic mission, the Santa Cruz de San Saba mission, protected by the Presidio San Luis de las Amarillas, on land claimed by the Comanche. As expected, the Comanche and Wichita burned the mission and attacked the Presidio. In 1759, the Spanish sent Colonel Diego Ortiz Perilla's army, but it was defeated at the Battle of the Twin Villages on the Red River. This allowed the Lipan to weaken their rivals, giving them 25 years of relative peace while the Comanche raided Texas and Mexico, often crossing the Rio Grande to target Chihuahua. These raids, usually at night under a bright full moon known as the Comanche moon, focused on stealing horses, weapons, and prisoners. In 1785, Spain signed a treaty with some Comanche clans for peace and trade, but when those leaders died, the raids resumed, as new generations weren't bound by old agreements. The Spanish, struggling with the Apache, kept trying to ally with the Comanche, trading corn and goods for horses, bison, and captives, but peace remained elusive. Horses made the Comanche a dominant force. By the late 18th century, with an estimated 20,000 to 40,000 people, their cavalry controlled over 500,000 square kilometers. As the United States grew in the east, pushing other tribes into Comanche territory and settlers into their lands, the Comanche saw opportunity. They sold stolen Mexican horses in bulk at the St. Louis market, a trade that thrived into the mid-19th century. The Comanche avoided major epidemics until the late 18th century, but devastating plagues hit in 1780, 1781, and 1816-1817. Mexico's independence in 1821 cut off the horse tributes Spain once paid to the Comancheria, drying up their horse supply, just as American demand for horses surged. This fueled a surge in Comanche raids. In 1826, the governor of Nuevo León banned travel outside cities in groups smaller than 30 armed mounted men. By 1835, Chihuahua's governor offered 100 pesos for the scalps of hostile Native Americans, prompting peaceful tribes like the Delaware and Shawnee to hunt Apache and Comanche. Surprisingly, the Comanche turned to diplomacy. Already at peace with New Mexico, they signed a treaty with the United States and Eastern tribes in 1835, extending it to the Cheyenne and Arapaho in 1840. This allowed others to hunt in Comanche territory, securing peace on their western, eastern, and northern borders while leaving them free to raid southern Mexico without interference. Mexico, already weakened by the loss of Texas to independence, had no say in this arrangement. To counter the Comanche threat, Texas leaders created an elite unit, the Texas Rangers, armed with Colt revolvers. This strengthened Texas, leading to a peace treaty with the Comancheria in 1845. This trapped Mexico. Comanche could cross Texas to raid, but Mexico couldn't pursue them without risking war with Texas. From 1831 to 1848, dozens of Comanche raids hit Mexico, with 44 involving over 100 warriors. These raids killed 2,649 people and captured 852, while the Comanche lost only 702 dead and 32 prisoners. In March 1841, 6 Comanche groups with hundreds of riders struck 600 km into Mexico, killing 472 and capturing 100, paralyzing the country. In 1841, Mexico's central government planned a major response to the Comanche, but some citizens and governors refused to act. New Mexico's leader, for instance, defied orders, believing resistance was futile. In 1844, knowing a raid was coming to Chihuahua, he stayed silent, reflecting Mexico's division. In 1847, Durango offered 50 pesos per native scalp, yet 200 Comanche marched through its streets that year. Fear drove the bounty to 200 pesos per Comanche scalp in 1849, more than a worker's annual wage, but the Comanche remained untouchable, partly because Texas allowed their raids. The U.S. annexation of Texas in 1845 didn't change this. The peace treaty with the Comanche continued, and new trade posts were established, with Americans buying $18,000 worth of goods, about $600,000 today. A Comanche delegation even visited Washington to mark the occasion. Mexico, never recognizing Texas's independence, faced war with the U.S. from 1846 to 1848. The U.S. won decisively, gaining Texas, New Mexico, Northern California, Utah, Nevada, Arizona, and part of Colorado through the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, a region the size of Western Europe, weakened by years of Comanche raids. The U.S. Comancheria peace lacked clear borders, allowing American settlers to encroach on Comanche land. Any Comanche attack on these settlements triggered U.S. retaliation. The 1848 treaty with Mexico required the U.S. to stop Comanche raids into Mexico, making them responsible for border control. The gold rush brought new settlers, along with smallpox and cholera, devastating the Comanche. From 1849 to 1851, they lost about 40% of their population, a toll comparable to Europe's 14th century Black Plague. Despite weakened borders and reduced raiding, the Comanche persisted. In 1852, they launched their farthest raid, reaching Jalisco on Mexico's Pacific coast, 1,000 kilometers beyond the Rio Grande. The U.S. responded with a mix of diplomacy and force. In 1853, they offered $18,000 annually to keep the Comanche peaceful for a decade, but also built forts, blocked Mexico access, and settled more colonists in the Comancheria. Texas Rangers kept up their attacks, and by the late 1850s, U.S. Army infantry regiments targeted Comanche villages, which retaliated along the Santa Fe Trail. The Civil War didn't halt this pressure. Union forces, replacing Confederates, promised payments but delivered little due to war costs. After the war, with the U.S. exhausted and most Plains tribes at war, the government sought peace. They offered the Comanche, the northern tip of Texas and western Oklahoma, plus $15 per person annually for 40 years. The deal quickly fell apart. Some Comanche didn't sign, and the U.S. supplied poor-quality weapons and surplus army ammunition. American settlers hunted bison on a massive scale, reducing 15 million to just 1 million in a few years. Starving, the Comanche ate their horses, collapsing their way of life. Smallpox and cholera struck again in 1862 and 1867. By 1870, their population was down to 8,000 and shrinking. Between 1867 and 1868, the Medicine Lodge Treaty moved the Comanche and Kiowa to a 12,000 square mile reservation in Oklahoma, with annual goods and payments promised. Most complied, but some groups, led by Chief Quanah Parker, continued raiding Texas, keeping the Comancheria's resistance alive. In 1833, brothers John and Daniel Parker moved their family from Illinois to Texas to establish a Baptist church community. They settled along the Navasota River, building their homes around a small stronghold called Fort Parker. John, a seasoned soldier and scout, negotiated peace with local Native American tribes, but these agreements meant little to the Comanche, who roamed far and wide. On May 19, 1836, about 100 Comanche warriors attacked Fort Parker. Of the 30 residents, 5 were killed and 5 were captured. Most captives were later ransomed, but one was kept, Cynthia Ann Parker, the 10-year-old daughter of John and Sarah Parker. Adopted by a Comanche couple, she was raised as their own and given the name Nadua, meaning someone found. Cynthia fully embraced Comanche life, marrying Chief Peta Nocona, who chose her as his sole wife, a rare decision. They had 3 children. As the daughter of a community leader and niece of a colonel, Cynthia wasn't forgotten. In 1860, she was recognized and recaptured by Texas Rangers. Returned to her white family, her story spread across the United States, earning her land and a pension from the state. Yet, she still called herself Nadua and struggled to fit in among Texans, repeatedly trying to escape with her daughter to rejoin her sons in the Comanche, whom she considered her true people. Her son, Quanah Parker, became the last great Comanche war chief. In December 1873, to curb ongoing raids, the U.S. restricted rations and halted ammunition supplies to the Comanche. In May 1874, Comanche and Kiowa groups left their reservation, attacking bison hunters in June. This sparked the Second Battle of Adobe Walls on the 27th of July, 1874, launching the Red River War, the final Native American war in the region. The conflict ended quickly when Quanah Parker surrendered in April 1875. The Comanche resistance in the Great Plains had persisted remarkably, lasting 40 years after the U.S. began colonizing the West Coast. After surrendering, Quanah Parker adapted to reservation life, working as a tax collector and land negotiator for Texas farmers. He was elected sheriff and tribal judge, and in 1905, he joined President Theodore Roosevelt's inaugural parade, marking the symbolic end of the Comancheria's legacy.